solving square root functions and inequalities. The definition of a square root function is a function that contains a square root of a variable. The definition of square root inequalities is an inequality involving square roots. First, we're going to start with steps of how to solve square root functions. Step 1. Solve for the variable and make sure that the radicand is never negative. Step 2. Once you've found your variable, create an XY data table that has at least 5 points. Using X as your first point, plug in your answer from step 1 into the original problem to find your points for Y. Step 3. Once your XY data table is filled in, you are ready to graph your points. And then step 4, find your range. Now we are ready to solve square root functions. Example 1. Y equals square root of 3x. First, you solve for x. Set 3x greater than or equal to 0. Now you will solve for x. Remember that the radicand can never be negative. Divide 3 to both sides. Then you'll find that x is greater than, less than 0. Here is your domain. Now we create an XY data table. You will use 0 as your first point. Make sure that you have 5 points. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once you have picked your points for x, substitute it into the original problem, y equals square root of 3x, to find y. Now we are ready to graph. We are going to use our XY data table to graph. On this graph, you can see that y is greater than equal to 0. So then you know that the range of this function is y is greater than equal to 0. Now we are moving on to solving square root inequalities. Step 1. Always set the radicand less than equal to 0. Step 2. Then isolate x. Step 3. Once x is found, create your XY data table with at least 5 points. Plug in x into the original problem to find the points for y. Step 4. Now graph the points. Remember, when the signs are greater than or less than, it's dashed line. When it's greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, it's a solid line. Step 5. Create your test points to see if the inequality is true or false. If the statement is true, shade where 0 exists. If the statement is false, shade where 0 does not exist. Now we are ready to solve a square root of an inequality. Example number 2. Y is greater than the square root of 2x plus 4. In order to graph this, we must set the radicand as greater than equal to 0. Once we have done this step, we must isolate 2x by subtracting 4 from both sides. Then we are ready to solve for x. We must divide each side by 2. X will be greater than equal to negative 2. Once that is done, we will plug in x into the original equation, y is greater than the square root 2x plus 4, to find values for y. to graph. Pick your testing points to identify if the inequality is true or false. My test points will be 1 and 2. This statement identifies the inequality is false, so now we must shade where 0 does not exist, or the region that does not include the test points. Fun fact: square roots are used all the time by scientists, engineers, and even people who work in factories. For inequalities, we can use it when we shop. Say you pick out 2 pants, but one is 30% off. You can use inequalities to find which item would be least expensive.